So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining the Riga TechGirls stage here. And yeah, it's definitely my absolute pleasure to have you all here as well, Liva, Roberts, and Kristaps, for joining here. And yeah, as already Anna mentioned, we are going to talk today about inclusion, about diversity in the workspace, and how we can move towards a more equal future, hopefully. And what should we do about that? And one of the main reasons we are here is to talk about said male champions. Basically, the people that, well, the male counterparts that can drive this such future. Because, you know, of course, women also definitely do everything they can to drive equality and diversity and inclusion, but men have to take a equally responsible part for that. And yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about what can men do, what should men do, and not just men, but people in general. So yeah, I guess let's get right to it. Let's start with the first question, and the question is going to be to everyone here. What has been your experience regarding diversity and inclusion in a workspace, and have you noticed any specific strategies implemented in your company in the past? Let's start with Liva.
Yeah, so a short introduction. My name is Liva Echwald. I run the company Intentional. We do intentional design for diversity in finance and investment. Very relevant for the topic prior to this. We run the diversity commitment among investors in Denmark and the accelerator program Leap Forward, all with focus to enhance diversity. And the question, what are our experience?
Yeah, what has been your experience regarding diversity and inclusion in the workspace?
So we started out doing this Female Founders in Tech program, having an NGO called Female Founders in Tech, so Female Founders of the Future, a lot of female words in front of it. And what we experienced was that when we ran the accelerator program Female Founders in Tech, we had a lot of awesome entrepreneurs with us, tech entrepreneurs, right? But at a certain point, one of the men in the room would say, well, now this is a female program and I'm a man, am I allowed to speak? That's when we knew we had created a culture where we created exactly that situation that we really wanted to change. And also we didn't have as many of the male co-founders participating in the program. Now we changed the name to Leap Forward, as we want to take a leap forward, not just tiny steps, but take a leap forward on this agenda. And there's a way higher percentage of the male co-founders participating. It's a criteria still to have minimum one female founding team. From there, we don't talk gender. From there, we build businesses. And I think that that simple criteria has given access to other perspectives of diversity in regards to age. So in this program, the youngest is 23, the oldest is 73. So we kind of wide age range, the diversity of technologies, markets, industry, educational background is extremely diverse by having that one criteria in the program. And then also the fact that you also, whether you are man or woman, have a responsibility to create an inclusive culture in whatever you do. And we made a mistake, and we also saw that with very minimum effort, we changed it.
Yeah.
So very minimal. Our key learning is the topic is extremely complex, and the solution so extremely banal.
Thank you, Liva. What about your experience?
So my experience obviously comes as an owner of a company, right? So I can think of this ecosystem as a single business. The first thing I definitely agree, it's a very complex thing to capture in half an hour, but when I thought about it, I think there's even worth taking a step back, right? So this is not only what we as businesses do, but there's, I think, a question of general education, right? So the way I think about it is like it's very hard to retrain or kind of teach a dog a new trick, right? Old dog a new trick. So I think there was this, we lately have talked about anti-vaxxers or flat earth people, and there's this famous quote of astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was asked, like, what should you do about people who believe in flat earth, and he said, like, nothing. We just like educate next generation. So as a business owner, you also think what are the things you can actually change in people's behaviors, right? And that's where I think it's more important who are the people you let in, meaning who goes through your recruitment doors and how you deal with people that should not belong to the company. And the other things, I think when you think about these initiatives, in many cases those are only checkboxes companies do, and then you kind of lose the whole purpose of it, right? So I think every company have to be very open to themselves, like whether you do it so you would look good as a company or whether you actually believe it. And I think the first and most paramount thing is how leadership use it, because everything goes top down. And my philosophy is more like I believe in virtues, not values. And what I mean by that, it's not really kind of the procedures you make, but like how you act as a leader, right? And whatever procedures you're going to make, if leaders are not going to show the example, there's like no point of the policies. And funny enough, in our company, we don't have any strict, but I don't think we don't have any single diversity policy at all, but it's the way we act is what makes us, I think, diverse, at least in the context, what you would mean diversity at this region. But we have, obviously we could do better, but a third of our workforce are female. It's even better actually on managerial level. 40% of our managers are females, including tech roles. So and kind of that we got by looking at how you can fairly evaluate people without looking at their gender, and naturally happened for us.
Thank you, Robert. And of course, this is also what we Riga TechGirls are doing. We are trying to get women more into the tech, and so hopefully soon enough it's going to be 50-50. Kristaps, what about your experience?
My experience actually is like not that great, I would say, but that's why I joined Riga TechGirls and trying to do better. Also, from my part, I have failed previously. Totally, I can admit. But I always expand this topic not about women, but also about queer people, people of color, disabled folks, and so on. So actually, we need to maybe expand more because we kind of left these people out as well. So so I think we will discuss about topics. What can we do better in upcoming minutes?
Okay, thank you. And then next question I'd like to ask is regarding the recruitment process. Robert, you already touched upon that, about how you do it in Nordigen. So we know that quite often the recruitment process itself is not exactly inclusive. What would be the recruitment strategies that could help include more women in tech? Liva, maybe once more you can.
Yeah, so in Denmark now I'm going to promote an awesome company, right? Develop Diverse have developed, let's say, spelling check for biased language. So whenever you do a job posting, we all leave cues for gender, for culture, for age, clues whether we want to attract a young or old or white or black. We can even go into without noticing that we are doing that, and just as well as in regards to gender. And that's not something that we can all think our way out of, because often it's unknown to ourselves how biases play in. And here you can, with that tool, you can actually make the job posting as neutral as possible so that you can attract as broadly as possible. So that is the purpose of that tool that can be implemented in any recruitment processes. And I think that's also what we've been working when we work with investors. Whatever whatever it is, technology or redesign of order of actions you do, or let's say documenting data in your deal flow. We work mainly with investors. Having all these small hacks to hack that biased behavior we all have, whether that is using technology and process design to do that, that's, I think, is the way forward. Because and of course that's a leadership choice to make an active choice to want to. We just had the stage before, whether it's mindset or data, and I think it's a combination of leadership wanting the change, and then there are all these tools to making that want happen, right? So that's our experience. So go. I hope they get a lot of sale in like where anytime soon. Yeah.
Thank you, Liva. Roberts, Kristaps, anything to add here?
I can add what I learned is not to hire your copy. That would be my take, because if you hire the same, then like nothing will happen. Like people will be the same, and diversity sparkle won't spark at all. So that has been my learning.
Which is definitely, I'd like to comment, not an easy thing, because when we look at anything, we want to associate with the things, the people we see. So this is something we have to proactively think about. So yeah.
If I may add something to that, so often people come to me and say, "Do you know some female tech talent?" Then I say, "Yeah, if we can swap with male tech talent, because we most definitely attract. We are white, we're women, we attract people that look like us. Thus, we have no problem finding a female tech talent. So we attract a lot of female talent, and we would like to swap and mix it a little bit up. Yeah."
Roberts, regarding the recruitment process.
It's not that simple, right? Because the thing is that like if you phrase that as like a diversity policy and imply it on recruitment, let's say in every recruitment panel I want to have diversity, right? I don't think those things really work as such, because there's like multiple reasons why there's a backlash. But like if you think what is the whole point of it, what you want to have, you want to have fair recruitment process, right? So actually, instead of I think even calling like diversity policies, the question is like whether you can make sure, let's say your recruitment managers can be very can make a fair decisions, right? And obviously people have biases. They look for people that look and talk like them. The question is, can your managers see beyond themselves, right? And I think by achieving that, you actually kind of solve the diversity problem, because then you're actually hiring people based on merit. And if that is the truth, then you also should have a diverse workforce.
Yeah, I do agree to that sentiment. And now I'd like to move into the name was Male Champions in Tech, so I guess let's move towards the male part, the male questions. And the first one I'd like to ask everyone, your thoughts on what role do men play in driving equality in the workplace?
I think the men should start by answering before me being wise on what men should do.
I can start with the small story what I have seen. There was like scene that in a team there were like multiple people, men and women, and then from other team, I won't mention a company. Actually, it's a well-known company. Another male came from another team and wanted to ask a question for that team, because they need to cooperate, right? And then he came, and then he asked, and there was like other males were out to lunch or something. And there was this girl, right? And then they came. They asked, "Where are these people?" But this girl, she totally could answer that question. She was actually a developer, and she knew everything. And later, when the males come, then they came and asked questions, and she was like, "What the hell? I knew these answers." So maybe that I can start with that. What has I have seen and what has happened in workplace. So yeah.
Again, more conceptual thinking. I think the real question is like who has the power of making decisions, right? And who is who can be a gatekeeper. And it's interesting. It can go both ways, right? In your case, actually, vice versa. So I think abstracting from your gender or any other characteristic as a person you have, whether it's like biology or interest or whatever, I think the question is, and that's why it comes back to leadership, right? I think it's gonna gender abstract. It's more like who is the leader and whether leaders are willing to make the choice. And obviously, we all know what are the kind of the context and like how most of the big companies are structured and what is the ratio of gender there. And obviously, a lot of power is in kind of men's laps. So obviously, I think also responsibility therefore goes there. But I think the reason why I'm going back to leadership, because then the question is not only about male to female ratio, but like any other characteristic, right? So yeah, I would say whoever holds the power should be responsible of that and make sure that you have an inclusive place. And if those are men, then there should be men.
Although I still will touch upon this a bit later on regarding leadership, but first of all, Liva.
So, when touching upon leadership comes with a role of responsibility, whatever gender you got, right? And historically, whatever your skin color, your gender, is also comes with privileges. Whenever you got power or privilege, you have a role and responsibility to give access. And that's, I think, when we work with entrepreneurship and venture funding, etc., it's documented that in regards to looking at tech talent and also female founders, what has been documented is the access to knowledge, network, role models, funding. All of these things are not given by definition. So whenever you got a privilege, you got power, you have the opportunity to give access to those with less privilege than you or less power than you, whether that is skin color, ethnic background, what it may be. So I think that role and responsibility is to give access, basically. Yeah. And then also when it comes to when you are in a leadership position, you also have the role and responsibility to create an inclusive culture where people feel welcome, where people feel safe enough to contribute into that conversation. And in that example you came up with, that people feel that they're allowed to speak up, both in sharing their knowledge and competencies into a team, but also to speak up when someone kind of overrules and insists on group thinking, and we all agree that we agree, don't we all, and everybody just nods. Then someone in the team has to feel safe enough to be allowed to speak up and say, I disagree. And that again, back to that male founder saying, hey, am I allowed to speak, right? And don't create that situation where people are to ask, am I allowed to speak, or to hold back when they have something that they can bring to the table, or they have something that they can use to support co-founders, colleagues, whatever it may be in that team. And I think that's, again, back to the leadership role and responsibility of driving that culture. And that comes down to, is everyone in the room psychologically safe enough to be here and be present with what you got to bring to that table?
It's the whole equity/equality dilemma is actually very interesting here, and that's where it's very hard to be kind of drive this solely as a single unit of a business, right? Because we can make the most inclusive environment ever, but if you don't have these steps beforehand, like the education and kind of the bridge towards the workforce, and then all the other things, like there's nothing much we can do, right? That's why we need entities like Riga TechGirls, right, that kind of do those bridges. And then once we have, let's say, once the workforce is already diverse and they trust that they have the equal merit irrespective of their characteristics, then we as businesses can step in. I think here locally there's still lots to be done. I'd be happy to be a roadblock for inclusivity, but surely over some time there's going to be more and more responsibility toward business owners. I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a lot to do beforehand.
I think that everyone has an opportunity to act, and everyone within the startup ecosystem building businesses should look at where they stand, whether you're an advisor, an investor, a founder, educator, or whatever, a legislator, whatever you do in that ecosystem, we can all sit and point at each other and say, they should act first. They should act first. You should act first. Instead of pointing that finger, ask yourself, what can I do where I stand today? And then so how can I hire one? How can I hire two? How can I hire 10? And once you have that, how can I educate 10, right? What can you do from that position you are in? I think everyone can act and not wait for someone else to take action, or the educational system needs to change first. The kindergartens need to change first. I don't have time for kindergarten. I'm here right now. I'm not going to go back to kindergarten first. I'm right here on this stage, right? And these talents are out here, right here. They're not going to go back to school.
No.
So that's like, what is your role and responsibility? And that is what, when we work with investors, that's what we look at right now. What can you do? Then we can talk to someone else and say, your role and responsibility is this or that, or this or that.
I completely agree. I'm not running away from responsibility. It's more like, again, at the very basic principle, I want to have a fair environment, right? And obviously, it's a collection of multiple things, and it's really kind of the whole ecosystem that does these things together. But it's very hard to do as a business owner alone, right? So, and there are all these positive discrimination traps, right? And kind of enforcing those policies and making sure people actually follow those things. And it's very hard to be the alone that does it, right? So kind of obviously you need everyone for it actually to work. But yeah, my point I think more was like I have higher expectations on the steps beforehand as well.
This actually brings me to a question I had, and I kind of heard already Liva's thoughts on that, and Robert's yours as well. So I'd definitely like to hear from Kristaps. And I had your thoughts on the following statement: that no matter the position and regardless of the strategies created by management, all men and people are responsible for the deployment of inclusion and diversity strategies in companies. What are your thoughts on this statement?
Yeah, totally. If you recall my story, when I started, then the outcome shouldn't be like that. And I have seen, sadly, mostly good examples across the Atlantic Ocean. I have been multiple times to US. Their inclusion is totally different level. Sometimes even it's hard to believe that's real, but they're like doing very good job there. So so definitely everyone should be like welcomed, can talk out, and also disagree and so forth. And it's not an easy task. What I think everyone needs to do, what Liva mentioned, we need to call out if something like that happens. That is something we definitely can start. We see like colleague isn't behaving well, not like hey, you bastard or something, not like that, but like educating, because we need to educate others as well. Hey, this is not okay because that person would feel sad or something. Just explaining, and sometimes it's that people don't understand these things. Like they cannot go to kindergarten, right? But we can explain them, and I think by explaining, educating, that is the definitely first step. And those are my thoughts.
Yeah, the saying "ignorance is a bliss" is sometimes it rings true, but maybe this is not the case. You cannot ignore such situations, and you certainly do need to acknowledge when a person does something wrongful.
You know, like we had this. Actually, it's going to follow up on our debate or short discussion. I'd rather say it's like obviously that all sounds good on paper, and how Liva said, like everyone should partake in this change, right? I think the point I would still try to make is if leadership is not on the same page, doesn't matter what you do, but still for it to be full inclusion, obviously everyone has to partake. Not that simple. So, and then the question is like, should we talk with everyone or should we start with leadership? And most really have a better idea. Like that's the first business I'm doing, so what the heck I know. But I think still goes top down, and because like if a leadership has hired bunch of racists and misogynists, like whatever you're gonna tell those people at the coffee breaks you have will not change a thing, right? So
I think one of the investors talking about ESG strategies for startups, founders can sometimes be maybe, look, okay, now need to take care of the environment, I need to save the world on diversity, and I need to, hey, I'm building a business, right? And that can be sometimes the arguments that we hear, I don't have time for that. but your business will have an impact on society. It will have an impact on the world, and take that approach just like you build your product. Most likely in an agile, you have a roadmap, you have a whatnot. Building that step by step and have those incremental improvement constantly. I think that's the same with leadership and culture. You don't have ESG strategies day one you founded your company. No one does. But how can you build that and make those active leadership choices and be conscious and maybe make those mistakes where, like we did, hey, excluding men, right? And then see that, and just like anything else in entrepreneurship, you make a mistake, you learn from it, right? And then do it better tomorrow. And I think that's the same with this. No one is going to be experts on diversity or bias or anytime soon. Most likely you should be an expert on your business and then grow up to be that leader you want to be in your company. And leadership is about making those choices. What kind of culture will I build? What kind of world do I want to live in? And how do I want to affect the world around me? And I think that these are the choices that comes with, and then educate yourself along the way. Figure out, I totally constantly overlook one of my colleagues, and I forget to ask, hey, what are your perspectives, right? Of course, now you're the moderator, but what are your perspectives? And include and ask those that are maybe too often not asked. Yeah. So build, measure, learn. The entrepreneurial way. Challenge your assumptions. I think that's page number 1 in any entrepreneurial book.
That's already kind of the answer for my final question, because we are running out of time. And the closing question that I wanted to ask is, what can we and everyone in the audience do to make sure that we are nurturing an inclusive culture in the companies we represent? And of course, one thing you already mentioned is that whenever you do wrong, and we are human beings, we are people, of course we are gonna make mistakes. It's not something we can just strike out, I'm gonna be perfect from here on out. But you mentioned that we just need to acknowledge them and learn from them, and that's something we can definitely all take away from this. But maybe you have any other closing statements regarding what can we, the people here on the stage and the audience, do?
I can mention one very simple way. Just join Riga TechGirls. It's very good organization, so you will have your place there. So I think even that, if that is the smallest step, definitely do it. That will make good for so many folks and show attitude as well, which sometimes actually is very, very important.
Thank you, Kristaps.
Liva put it very nicely. Like, I can only repeat what she said. Like, you first and foremost, you build a business, and you learn from mistakes.
Well, thank you for the compliment here on stage. So I would say, support each other. Like, kind of give that shout out to each other. Also, when you do it good, right? But also, in regards when you want to build, measure, learn, of course, the classical way is don't blame the market. Get your numbers straight, and sometimes that is documenting, sometimes counting how many people are we, what do we look like here on stage, and know those numbers, because once you visualize that for yourself, you can see if you're systematically leaning towards one or the other side, right? And then just like you have a 10x strategy for growth, have your 10x organizational strategy on board and say how is this organization going to look like when we're 10, 20, just go with that table, 10, 20, 20, 50, 30, blah, blah, blah. How is it going to look like when we are that 10x organization? Yeah.
Okay. On this note, I would really like to say a huge thanks to Liva, to Roberts, and to Kristaps for joining us here today on the stage, and to everyone in the audience for joining and listening as well. So, yeah, thank you so much, and I hope that everybody heard something to take away with them to home. And yeah, for future endeavors. Thank you so much.